Good morning. Happy Wednesday to everybody from Central Virginia. Had a couple things I wanted to mention today. This is kind of specific to the state of Virginia, or I should say the Commonwealth of Virginia. But, you know, bad ideas can spread to other places quite easily. Okay? Um, we're about to inaugurate a new governor and a new, well, a lot of the people are returning, but House of Delegates. Uh, I believe the governor is seated, I think she takes office on January 17th, but the legislature, if I'm correct, takes their seats the beginning I think it's the beginning of next week on the 14th. I could be wrong on the exact date. I know it's before the 14th because that's when the new legislative session opens up for the state assembly, the state senate and the House of Delegates. In Virginia, we have 100 members of the House of Delegates and we have 40 members of the state senate. Now, in the recent election we had in November, the state senate wasn't involved with it because they're not up until 2027. They serve 4-year terms, and unlike the U.S. Senate, they're all up at the same time. They're not staggered. But the members of the General Assembly who are in the House are up every 2 years. So we are going into 2026 with I believe it's 64 to 36 Democrat majority. It could be 62 to 38. I know it's very close to that, but the Democrats do have a very sizable majority in the state House of Delegates. In the Senate, I believe it's 21 to 19. And there was a special election in the Senate on, I believe it was yesterday, in Chesterfield County to fill the vacancy of the seat vacated by Ghazala Hashmi, who was elected to be the new lieutenant governor. That seat did not change. It was still a Democrat, solid Democrat majority district. I think it was the 77th, but I'm not sure. But anyway, so this is what we're facing. The main, aside from taxes and bad economic policy and things like that, artificially raising minimum wage, um, constrictive energy-based policies and things like that. The main thing that my subject of this video is pertaining to the Second Amendment and what this means to gun owners in Virginia. I got a couple things I compiled from the VCDL, which is think of it as the state-based version of the NRA, but much more effective. Um, a couple bills that the VCDL is very highly against is House Bill 24 by Delegate Helmer. And I actually met Delegate Helmer. He's actually a pretty nice guy, but he's a military veteran, but he's way wrong about firearms. I don't understand it. Smart guy, but he's way off on that. It would basically affect reciprocity. What that means is that Virginia residents who have a concealed carry permit have counterparts in other states. There are citizens of other states who have concealed carry permits. Virginia reciprocates with many other states, and he would change the criteria of somebody being able to have a concealed carry permit so that if another state had a slightly different requirement than Virginia, that Virginia would no longer recognize that state's permit, and thus that state would not recognize Virginia permits. His mentality is that it's just another obstacle to the Second Amendment, but essentially it's a solution in search of a problem. Um, People with concealed carry permits who live in Pennsylvania or Ohio or Indiana, for that matter, aren't coming into Virginia and committing violent felonies with their concealed handgun. So concealed people who have permits are generally not the problem wherever you go. And it just does something that'll make it more cumbersome for you as a gun owner to say, "Oh no, I can't go in that state. Oh, I better not carry there." it's going to hurt the state economically because a lot of people just say, the hell with Virginia. I'm not going to go visit there. But it just seems really stupid because there's no, it gives me the ick because there's no, we don't, if we had a problem with people coming to Virginia from Pennsylvania by the busload and they were all robbing banks and robbing stores and mugging people when they got here, okay, then you take a look at it. But that problem doesn't happen. Just like people don't with Virginia permits don't drive up into other states and start committing felonies. Another one is HB 21, and it's joined with SB 27. HB 21 is from Delegate Helmer again. I believe he's from Fairfax, and the state senator Foy. And basically, it opens up firearms, not only manufacturers, but dealers, people who sell accessories, and possibly even private citizens to civil liability, meaning you can be sued because somebody else misuses a firearm in the commission of a crime. So let's say you sell a scope to somebody and that person uses it to murder somebody else. You could theoretically be civilly liable. Um, let's say you sold a semi-automatic pistol to somebody and they went out and robbed a bank with it. Where do you draw the line on that? Does a if a car dealer sells you a Toyota and you use that Toyota in a drive-by shooting, is it his fault? My son is a beer salesman. If my son sells an order of beer to a convenience store and then somebody drinks a 12 pack and then gets into a car accident, is my son civilly liable because he sold the beer to that store? Is the store owner liable for the what the drunk guy did? I mean, this can get out of hand. Is McDonald's responsible for me being overweight or Burger King? No, of course not. So that's just something that is really going to it's probably going to hurt small manufacturers. They're never going to do this to companies that have large contracts with the government. So they won't, if a police officer murders a defendant for something, and they're never going to blame the gun. They're going to blame the police officer. They're going to blame the department. They're going to blame the mayor. They're not going to blame the manufacturer of the firearm that the police officer used. But yet, if a criminal misuses a firearm, well, then that's the gun's fault. We've just got a lot of weird thinking in our society. Another bad bill is HB 40 from Delegate Simon. It has to do with unserialized uh, firearms. Okay, not really ghost guns, but let's say you are a metalsmith and you make a block of aluminum that's eventually going to become something for a firearm and it's not serialized. Well, then if they take this law to the extreme, then you're guilty of it. Um, it's another solution in search of a problem. Unserialized firearms, homemade guns, have been in existence before the United States was ever a country. So that's one of those things that, you really don't have too much of a problem with that. You have more problems with maybe a gangbanger getting a pistol or a rifle and obliterating the serial number, which is an offense in itself. Another one is HB 110 by none other than my delegate, Amy Lawfer, who's probably more anti-Second Amendment than just about anybody on the face of the earth. It basically provides that if you have a visible firearm in your unattended vehicle, so if you go into a store, now it is dumb to leave a firearm in plain view. That's stupid. But she would subject you to a $500 fine plus having your car towed. So now the towing company has your firearm. Okay. Um, who's at fault? How about the criminal who breaks into your car to steal a firearm? So this also potentially comes into conflict with another bill where cannot, you have to have everything out in the open. So you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. Um, Another bad one is HB 19, Delegate McClure. Um, Basically, if somebody is in a dating relationship and they are convicted of misdemeanor battery, probably something to do with domestic violence, and it would provide a 3-year moratorium on being able to purchase a firearm. Okay, that's a misdemeanor offense, not a felony. So 3 years suspending your Second Amendment right for a misdemeanor, and that would mean that you wouldn't be able to buy a firearm. Now, I can understand there are some restrictions on getting a concealed carry permit for certain misdemeanors, but this is for you're taking away somebody's entire Second Amendment right not to have a gun, just to own it for a misdemeanor offense. That's I don't think that flies anywhere. Um, there's SB 38, Senator Favola, and HB 93, Delegate Bennett Parker. And it is basically you have to surrender your firearms if you are a respondent or you're subject to a protective order, a restraining order, if you will. You have to surrender your firearms, and you can't somebody who lives with you can't have a firearm then. So that means that if a husband is a subject of a restraining order, that his wife wouldn't be allowed to have a shotgun for her self-defense. So you're taking away somebody else's right. That kind of goes down a road you don't want to go down. Or it also doesn't allow you to leave your firearms with anybody under 21. So if you have a 19 or a 20-year-old adult child, you wouldn't be allowed to leave your guns with them, even though they're legally allowed to have it. That's going to run into constitutional problems. Some of the other things, I don't have an actual bill number for it, but they want to expand red flag laws, make it easier for somebody to have their firearms taken away. It kind of, you hear leftists talk about due process. Well, that goes all out the window. That due process goes out the window, and people are going to get red flagged when the situation really doesn't warrant it. If somebody is truly a danger to themselves or to others, Virginia and every other state has some provision for an emergency custody order or a temporary detention order. So if the person's dangerous, you remove the person. You don't go in and try and take all their guns and then leave them there all angry, because you might not get all their guns and they're still going to be dangerous to where they could do something else. So that's just something else that just puts another nail in the coffin for gun rights in Virginia. Um, they're going to come back with bans on standard capacity magazines, which they will call high capacity. The standard, they want to use 10 rounds. So magically, if a firearm has, um, let's say, a Colt M1911 or a Springfield Arms 1911, anything like that, the standard magazine is 7 or 8 rounds. Okay, if you had one of those extended ones that stuck down out of the hand grip and it held, say, 15 rounds, that would certainly be extended capacity, but or high capacity, but that's standard. Now, if you have a Glock 19, which is 9mm shell instead of 45, it's smaller. Standard capacity for a Glock 19 is 15 rounds. They would make that illegal. Some of the bills, I don't know if they're going to go this far, but when Ralph Northam was governor, one of the bills put forth would have made any semi-automatic firearm that is capable of accepting a detachable magazine with more than 10 rounds illegal. Well, that's just about every semi-automatic, because almost all of them could hold a magazine, except a magazine that's bigger than that. That would make us worse than California. In California, you can have a Glock 19 if it has a magazine with a pin in it that only holds 10 rounds. Um, but there is no standard magazine for a Glock 19 that only holds 10 rounds. It's 15 for a Glock 21, which is 45 caliber. I believe it's 13 rounds because they're double stack. For an AR, the standard magazine is either 20 rounds or 30 rounds. Okay, if you have a 10-round magazine in an AR, it's barely going to stick down beneath the magazine well. So that anything that 20 or 30 round is not high capacity, that's standard capacity. What considers to be standard or high capacity is going to depend on the type of weapon and the caliber of the weapon and the frame of it. A small frame revolver is not going to be able to hold as many rounds as, a rifle. It's just crazy. They're just picking the number 10, just picking it out of the air. And as far as I can tell, there's no grandfather clause on it. They're going to debate that, and they're going to try and get people to go along with it. Like, well, we'll let you keep it if you have it. One of the bills that I don't think ever got out of committee, they were going to allow people to register magazines. They tried that in Connecticut, but magazines aren't serialized. So how do you register it? New Jersey passed a law against any magazine over 10 rounds. And as of a couple years ago, the state police superintendent said nobody turned it in. And they didn't even have a grandfather clause. It was an ex post facto law, which could arguably violate the Constitution as well. They passed a law and said if you already have it, you have to turn it in. Well, if they got nobody to turn it in New Jersey, nobody complied in New Jersey, what the hell do they think is going to happen in Virginia? Sorry, people, we ain't buying it. Another very bad thing was to require a firearms owner's ID card, similar to what Massachusetts and New Jersey have, where you have to basically get a permit in order to buy a gun, not carry it, buy it. Now, there would be a fee attached to that, of course. You would have to probably go through a background investigation, just like you do with a concealed carry permit. But what's to stop them from raising that fee every couple years? And then if you don't pay it, then they come knocking on your door. Hey, you didn't pay your fee. See, what would the Democrats say if Republicans said, "Oh, let's put a poll tax. When people register to vote, they have to buy a permit to vote. We're going to charge them a fee." That wouldn't go. The courts would shut that down right away. So they should do that to this too. That idea should be taken outside, put in a bonfire, and burned to a crisp. Um, Another thing they're going to try and do, I don't have a bill number for this, but they're going to come up with some kind of assault weapons ban. Well, these people don't even know what an assault weapon is because truthfully, it doesn't even exist. Assault is a behavior. If you assault somebody with any kind of weapon, it can be an assault weapon. But just back to the military definition of an assault rifle, the military, you have selective fire. So like an M16A1, M16A2, M4, where you've got the safe, semi, and auto or burst mode, where there's more than one round per trigger pull. Those weapons are only available to the military, with very few exceptions, and unless you're willing to spend thousands upon thousands of dollars, a military assault weapon is not available to members of the public. An AR-15 is not an assault rifle. AR stands for Armalite rifle, but civilians are only allowed to get semi-automatic weapons. Like I said, unless you want to jump through the hoops and get BATF approval, you're just going to get a pew pew, not a pew pew pew. So, that's they're gonna try that, and they base the criteria on cosmetics, not range or ballistics. So they're just going to rely on people who are ignorant to go along with it. Um, Another bad idea is a 5-day waiting period. Well, that's so they can do a background check. Well, that's irrelevant in Virginia because a background check takes about 20 minutes. The purpose of the 5-day waiting period, according to some of them, they will tell you, oh, it's to allow people to cool down if they're heated and they want to get a gun and go hurt somebody. It allows them to cool down. Well, and also, if somebody is being threatened and they're a victim of crime or stalking or whatever, then you slow them down and you give their assailant an extra 5 days of lead time. So be careful, folks. That knife cuts both ways. Plus, if they can do a 48-hour, 72-hour, or a 5-day waiting period, well, why not a 7-day or a 15-day or a 30-day or a 60-day? Well, maybe there's no reason to buy more than one gun a month or one gun every 6 months or one gun a year. It's the slippery slope turns into an icy precipice. Now, enough of the bad bills. Some of the ones that are good that the VCDL supports. SB 78, State Senator Diggs. It raises the mandatory minimum sentence for violent crime from 5 years to 10 years. Now, see, that is the good kind of gun control. You're focusing on the criminal, not the gun, and you're not interfering with peaceable citizens. But see, the Democrats are going to oppose that because they don't really care about reducing crime. They care about punishing you and punishing me and taking away other people's rights, not protecting society. And you'll notice that they will never give up their armed security details and their police officers paid for by taxpayer dollars. Another one from Senator Diggs, good for Senator Diggs, SB 79. It removes the idiotic ban on legal carry of firearms at rest areas. They put a gun ban on at state highway rest stops because they're considered state agency buildings. Well, VDOT is a state agency, yeah, but you're not really going in there to conduct business with the state. It's not like a courthouse or a school or a circuit court clerk or something like that. There's been a lot of assaults at rest areas too. And see, when you make a rest area a gun-free zone, the criminals know that too. So you get out of your car, you leave your legally owned weapon in your car, and you got to walk up. It's dark, man. You're prime target for mugging because you can't be armed. You can't defend yourself. So good on Senator Diggs. Hopefully they get rid of that. They also should get rid of being able to carry in a liquor store. Terry McAuliffe did that by executive order back in 2014 or something. They put the no gun signs on liquor stores, but as far as I'm aware, that was never passed by the legislature and signed into law by the governor. That was done by executive order. I don't think anything's changed since then, but that's probably not a legitimate law, because when you get arrested, they have to charge you for violating a law, not an executive order. But I digress. HB 101, Delegate Ballard. This removes the requirement for written paperwork to get a concealed handgun permit. It allows you to do it electronically. We do everything else electronically. Why can't you do that? If you meet all the requirements and you could submit the paperwork with an email, nothing wrong with that. HB 106. Oh, hi, sassafras. HB 106, also Delegate Ballard. This reduces the concealed handgun permit fee from $50 to $25. Okay, I admit there's a cost to it, but $25 for 5 years is better than 50. I paid 50 the last time I renewed mine in 2024. Um, I I paid 50, and now if they can reduce it to 25, that's great. Personally, I would love to see Virginia adopt permitless carry, where you don't have to get a permit to exercise your constitutional rights. But right now, that ain't going to happen. Um, there's no way that's going to happen in Virginia right now, even though Kentucky, West Virginia, and Tennessee all are neighbors. They've got permitless carry and they've had good results with it. North Carolina came very close to getting it. I think the governor, Roy Cooper, I think he vetoed it, but they would have been the 30th state. 29 states now have it. Okay, that's about it. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go into the weeds. I just wanted to let people know what was going on, some of the things in Virginia. Um, I could say some things about the Venezuela stuff, but I'm not in the mood to do that right now. I just wanted to bring up some Virginia centric things that are going on right now. But everybody have a good day. I'll do another video later.